Oh my god, I'm so tired. I've been using my voice so much, so just bear with me. I need to take a break off. Um, I've been working on these other videos type things. So I'm gonna take a break just to talk about this stuff. Like I said, I gotta give my voice a rest and stuff, but I do want to talk to you about this fucking stupid New World shit, and we'll go into it. Alright, so this is gonna be really long, unedited, and it's gonna be me kind of rambling off telling you the truth about New World, and you'll finally be able to put the pieces together and understand what happened to Graal Kingdoms, what happened to Graal New World, what happened to Graal Balmy Moon. So a large part of this video is going to be focused on the New World project, which never happened. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with you so that you understand why these games came to be and why they are no longer here. Because there's a lot of scandal around New World that a lot of people don't understand, because you're never going to be told this. People who are committing scandals are never going to admit it to you, and they're certainly never going to speak well of the victims who are speaking the truth about it. They're going to discredit us. So you're never going to hear the truth from Vangel. You're never going to hear the truth from Unixmad. You're never going to hear the truth from anybody. So where the fuck did New World go, right? There was a game called New World back in the year 2000 that was supposedly being developed. Some of this actually dates, I think, to late 1999, actually. But the bulk of it began, supposedly picking up in the year 2000. And I was there, and I remember everything. I was there. I was friends with the people. I was at the center of the community, and Vangel and I were supposedly friends. And at this point, I realized that Vangel was a massive predator. I joined Jesus Freaks, quote unquote, Jesus Freaks, as a religious group in the year 1999, and I mostly did that just to profess a faith in a higher power. I wasn't really a part of Jesus Freaks, even though if you go back to the archives, you will see me as one of the founding members. And I had never joined into their stupid religious stuff because I'm not really that quote unquote Orthodox or Christian as other people identify. I'm more of a universalist, so I was not wrapped up in Vangel's fucking world, but he wanted me on the name of the roster. You can go back to the websites and find that. That's all, documented history. So Vangel, what was happening was Unixmad and them were doing the Zelda clone. Stefan was ripping off Bomberman, and a number of other games like Tetris illegally on Java applets for this fake website called cyberjure.com. And Vangel was using the game engine that Zelda Online, as Stefan called it, was renamed to Graal. He was taking the engine and he was trying to make games with it like I was and other people were. Because it had then become a game engine, Stefan started trying to market the game engine. And so Vangel and the Jesus Freaks were creating so-called video games within the church, and they were going to dedicate them to Christ. So this is where New World begins. Way before, this is the history before the history that you guys will never be told. You'll never hear it from anybody other than myself. So I'll just give it to you because nobody's gonna fucking give you the truth. And I keep hearing all the time from people wondering what happened to New World and where it was, and there's all kinds of bullshit stories about New World and how everybody was victimized by Unixmad and stuff. And the real truth is that New World was never really even a real game. It was never even a real game. It's much darker than people actually give it credit for. And I know this because I was at the center of the Jesus Freaks when it first started, and that's when the bulk of the administrators, including myself, began to take over the gaming development community. So there was Klutz, there was Bruges, Aloran, Vangel, and myself, and we were the main Jesus Freaks people. And we were like also the people who were the main admins on Graal Classic, and this is where a lot of the exploitation in the game started getting stolen. Was Vangel was using Jesus to prey on kids, religious kids. And I was one of those religious kids. So this is all history you'll never be told. And at the time, it was not something I wanted to put out in the public. when I was a kid because, for one, I didn't really understand what was happening, and two, I was making my own stuff. I didn't need um, this kind of drama, and I also thought that Vangel and I were actually friends, but in retrospect, I can see what was really happening. So if you trace all of the admin pages back from to graalonline.com in the archives, you will find that the primary developers who were there when the company started becoming pay to play and the content started taking off and all these games started becoming quote unquote hosted on Unixmad's computer, aka tricked, and he started stealing them. This was through the Jesus Freaks Guild. So you can trace all of those names back to Bruges, Klutz, Vangel, Aloran, and myself. And we were all in this Jesus Freaks organization. So behind the scenes, what nobody ever really saw, and I can finally give you guys the truth to because I just feel ready to. Like, it's a lot to talk about. It's so confusing, and it's like if you weren't there, it's hard for you to even fucking understand what I'm saying. So I'm just gonna throw this out here, and it's gonna sound very, very brain fucked and befuddled because, again, I don't care. Like, I don't, it's too traumatic for me to go back through and constantly try to organize thoughts on stupid shit that's not beneficial or profitable to me, but I think that it's something you guys should know. So Jesus Freaks was luring all these kids in through the name of Christ, and of course I grew up in a religious family in the countryside, and so this is why I was like really into video game development, as I didn't really have a social life. I was in the country, and um, I had a lot of time to myself out there, and I couldn't just walk to the city and be around people and do things. It was just acres upon acres. There were farmland around me, all that types of stuff. So I was making video games as an artist out there in the countryside. And with a lot of time to myself on the computer and stuff, during the age of the during the early years of the internet, I was making websites and I was doing all kinds of stuff and teaching myself marketing. And this game engine that Stefan was developing had become interesting to me. I could make my own games with it. Before I had become a part of the Graal community, I had Zelda websites. I was running like Zelda fan sites and things like that for myself. It wasn't like huge or anything, but that's what I was doing. I was running a Zelda fan site. And I ran into the Graal community because it was originally Zelda Online, and the game engine became interesting to me. And so I was making my own games. When I joined the Jesus Freaks, just as like a religious, honorary thing to, I don't know, I guess just to showcase, because like in religion, you're supposed to wear your heart on your sleeve. So I kind of wanted to wear my heart on my sleeve, and I told Vangel that like, I was raised religious, and I thought it would be a good idea if I could like show that off. And so I did. I joined his stupid little fucking thing that he was doing. Um, and what happened was, Vangel and these other fucking weirdos were like making these so-called games in this church, and they were dumb. Like, they were dumb. I was like, I don't even know what you're making. Like, this is really stupid. Like, they had like these islands that they were walking around in outer space, and like, or something. I don't remember what it was. They were just kind of stupid to me. I was like, oh, cool. I guess you can walk on islands in outer space. So, like, it's not that bad of an idea, honestly. It's really not that bad of an idea. But at the time, I thought it was really stupid. And even today, I still think it's probably not the best idea because I don't know that they had much going on with it. Like, they didn't. So Vangel had coded something called the JFTP, which was the Jesus Freaks FTP program, where you could log into the backend and you could edit the files for these games that we were making. Again, this is all history that's been erased. Unixmad, Stefan, nobody's going to tell you this stuff. But you can check it all back on the archives. This was, back before they started stealing everything and claiming that that Graal was not a game development community and that they started selling it later. That's not the truth. Graal was originally just a freeware game engine. And so the Jesus Freaks were doing these games that they were trying to make for their guild. And I was like, because I was doing web design and graphics and things and animations, with my just with my own stuff as an artist, and then also because I was running Zelda fan sites, I was getting into writing my own content, my own stories and ideas and things, because I had an interest in games and I had an interest in epic narratives and epic tales. So I told Vangel, like, and there was other things too. I had other like religious backgrounds I'm not going to go into. But like I was just like, "Hey, I think I could probably help you with your stupid fucking games. Um let's just see where I could fit in." He's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." So like I found out that, they were lacking in graphic arts design. So I made some really dumb graphics. Some of them are still with you today. You've probably seen them and they're actually really terrible. They're terrible. Like they're not that great because I was like 12. And so I made these graphics for the game and then I said, "Hey, well, why don't you like instead of having these islands in space, why don't you make it more metallic and we'll go with more of like a futuristic space theme." And then when you're walking around on, the metal floor, like we'll have like clanking sounds and we'll just make it feel like you're like walking around in outer space and we'll just go with a futuristic theme. And he really thought that that was a good idea. He's like, "Yeah, sure, let's do that." He's like, "That's a really great idea." So we started doing that. We started making this outer space type game in the Jesus Freaks Guild. Um, that was basically going nowhere because it appeared to me that Vangel was all talk and no game. He had all this, this stuff he was doing. Like he was a programmer. Like Vangel was a programmer, he wasn't a game developer. He wasn't a visionary. He wasn't a project manager. He didn't have ideas. He wasn't an artist. He wasn't a concept artist, designer, or a story writer. He just wasn't doing any of these things. So that project wasn't going to go anywhere. I don't know what he was planning on doing. I guess he thought he was going to use the Jesus name from Jesus Freaks as like a church to lure kids in and have them build his games for him because nothing ever happened with them. Unless we were doing stuff with it. And so like I was like, "Well, you know, I don't know what's going on with this." I was like, "But I'm just going to go off and just kind of make my own stuff." And so I was going to like make something called Destiny, which I ended up making as an independent game because the Jesus Freaks weren't doing anything. Vangel was never doing anything. And this is the most important part of the story. Vangel was constantly trying to start video games using um, believers, children who believed in Jesus, by using Jesus's name and telling them that God would reward you if you did this stuff. So like Vangel was preying on us religious kids and using Jesus as a way to get us to try to make games for him. And I think he was going to use it to sell them and make himself famous or big. I don't know what he was trying to do, but he was certainly trying to get power and clout through using kids by making games. And he was trying to do that in the Jesus Freaks, and it wasn't working. And I think he thought that I was going to do that for him, and I wasn't. Because as I started making Destiny, it became clear to me that nobody was really helping. The most that happened was like I got Vangel to write like a script, a script for like a bird, because I was creating birds and animals, and I was making massive levels and writing stories and creating characters and names, and I was making websites and stuff for it. I was making animations. I had orchestrated these plays. Like we would do plays like Gallon and Vangel and these other people. They would play these roles in these plays. I was writing like screenplays, and then we would photograph them using the screenshots. It was like really primitive early stuff in the game development community. And so I was making these animated plays and I was like having them on my websites and I was showcasing different things like that. And I had a massive network that I was creating for myself. I had a number of stuff going on. I had Antago Gravity website, Antago Press. I had Graal Soft with Gandarian. I was working with the baddies because Gandarian was running the baddies at the time. I was in the Jesus Freaks. I was one of the founding members. And then I was getting different positions and stuff in different places, and I was making my own video games. I also had my own websites, like outside of this, like I said, I had something for a Zelda website before I had joined the Graal community. Um, I also had a thing called Chronic Man Shrine. I had tons and tons and tons of just projects and ideas that I was doing. Because I was a kid with a lot of time on my hand. And so basically what I was doing was I was planting a bunch of different like seeds and waiting to see which ones were working for me and which ones would stick. I was developing ideas for the software. I was working with Stefan. And then I had other projects I was working on with Ganmon and trying to just kind of make it all come together. So that was taking off, and Vangel, I think, started to like get really jealous because I was doing things that he wanted to do for his own power and his own name. And that wasn't going to happen for him because I wasn't going to give him all of my hard work. And I think he thought that I was going to do that by being a part of Jesus Freaks. Like at one point, he's like, you can't be a part of the baddies and you can't do this and you can't talk to those people. And those people are like, bad against Jesus. And you need to start coming to like the Sunday sermon meetings, or you can't like be in this guild or whatever. And I was like, I don't care, Vangel. Like, I just don't care. And he never removed me from this so-called fucking Jesus Freaks group. He calls it a guild. It was more of a church. Like, he never removed me from it, but he was like threatening me all the time and like bad mouthing me and telling people I was a liar and stuff. And I think, looking back, I can understand why he was doing that, because what happened was none of the video games for the Jesus Freaks took place, but all of my stuff was taking off because I was actually doing work and he wasn't, and he got sick of it. Like, he didn't like the fact that I was thriving above him. And so he collaborated with Stefan and Unixmad, because again, Stefan and Unixmad was just like a software and a server guy. So the software and the server guy were kind of like if you wanted something to happen in the engine or within like the bigger server or something, so that you could like filter it back out for your own projects and make your own projects come to life, you would have to interface with Unixmad and Stefan at times. So we were interfacing with Stefan and Unixmad at times. Again, they later completely robbed us. So, that's besides the point, though. I'm talking about where all this stuff was happening in the beginning. So we were making our own games, and Vangel was getting really upset with the fact that I was a bigger networker than him. I was more spiritual than him, more philosophical, more creative. And I had more friends than him. I had more power than him, more leeway, more time on my hands. I had more websites, bigger websites than he did. And Jesus Freaks wasn't working for him. And all these like little scams and rackets he was trying to create to like make him things happen for himself weren't happening. And I wasn't going to sit around and work on his stupid Jesus Freaks projects for him. Like, I was going to make my own stuff. So Destiny was going to potentially be a continent for the Jesus Freaks games that never happened. They never happened. And so like some of the Jesus Freaks people like donated some of their content for my own projects because Vangel sucked. Vangel wasn't good at what he was doing. He wasn't a good project manager. So the Jesus Freaks games were never happening. They weren't going to happen. They started to die, even though he had some prototypes. I say we because I guess I participated a little bit with my ideas. Like I said, I told them to make it space themed, and I did. They did start making it space themed, but I abandoned their little outer space world project. I abandoned it because it was going nowhere, and I was not going to be, Vangel's little peon slave and just make all of his stuff for him. And nobody else wanted to do that either, although some of those people were looking for someone like me. And Vangel was upset that I wasn't going to do that. And he was trying to use Jesus and God to like shame me into like doing that for him. Not going to happen, Vangel. And this is why Vangel also allowed them to rob me, because he's a narcissist. Like most people in church are. Like most people who run churches, like priests, are child predators and narcissists. Not all of them, but most of them. Most of them, they absolutely are. Because not only is religion full of like cultic ideologies and lies and nonsense and bigotry, but it's full of sexual abuse. Like even just the anti-LGBT messaging that gets pushed through the Bible and the retarded stuff that they claim to be true, like the world being created in 7 days. No, it was not. I don't believe in that, and I'm not going to sit around and lie for you people to be popular. I don't care. I don't believe in it. It's not real. The world absolutely was not made in 7 days. There were no magical, like, talking burning bushes and unicorns and fantasy gardens. None of that stuff was real. The Bible's an absolute fucking work of fiction. It's full of nonsense. It's full of psychotic messaging. There's slavery. There's misogyny in there. There's homophobia. There's racism. The Torah can burn in hell. The Bible can mostly burn in hell. Some of the books are pretty good in there. Like the book of Proverbs, I respect, but the other books can burn in hell. Like, I don't believe in this shit. It's hogwash. It's full of fucking homophobia, full of transphobia, full of bigotry, and it's being passed off as truth, and it's not. It's not true. So, like, I didn't, Vangel is absolutely a child predator, and he was trying to use religion to manipulate kids to get power. And that was failing. It was absolutely failing. So because it was failing and I was not going to be his slave like he thought I was going to be, and he thought I was going to sit in Jesus Freaks and make his stuff for him, and just like all these other kids, he thought that he owned us like property. He decided he wanted to, I don't know, show me up or something. I think part of it was motivated by him trying to outdo me because I was not going to help him, and and maybe it was just him trying to get an opportunity because he was purely narcissistically motivated, and he saw an opportunity to work with Stefan to do that. I don't know his entire motivations. I do know at some point he absolutely started like turning on me and trying to destroy my projects and my name, and he definitely was using New World as his next new racket for manipulating kids. So what happens is Vangel talks to Unixmad and Stefan and says, "Hey, I want to make a game. I've been making games," and he hasn't. He wasn't making games. The Jesus Freaks so-called games weren't going anywhere. Vangel's a liar. They were like mildly made with some of the stuff from Goku. And Goku actually lives near me. Like, Goku lives near me. We live literally in the same area. I could drive to his fucking house. Like, Goku lives by me. Me and Goku live near each other. We didn't know each other, but we were friends because, we come from the same area and things like that. And we were also uh, the same age. And we were game developing. So Goku wasn't doing much, though, because he was more of a programmer. And so some stuff was done in the Jesus Freak so-called games, but it wasn't going anywhere. These like little outer space project wasn't going anywhere. So Vangel tells Stefan and Unixmad, "Oh yeah, I've been making this stuff, blah, blah, blah." He was probably taking credit for my stuff too. I don't know what he was doing. And he got them to give him the so-called, I don't know, the green light to start making posts on graalonline.com under their name, and approval to ask kids in the community to build a new game called New World. So when the Jesus Freaks games weren't happening, Vangel asked Stefan and Unixmad to start a new project with him, together with them, that would be hosted on Unixmad's server instead of on the Jesus Freak servers, and that he was going to call it New World. And so you can see this all in the archives on archive.org. Go to graalonline.com. I think it's in October of 1999 or something. It's on archive.org. He starts asking any of the kids out there. You're talking about other parents' kids. This guy's a grown-ass adult. Vangel was a grown-ass adult. Him and some of these other adults, you have one in Paris, one in Rostock, Germany, and Vangel, who's living in the United States. They're like posting on graalonline.com asking kids, other parents' kids, to start making a video game for them. So New World gets up. They put up a stupid website. And by the way, that website was made by Nougat, NEW_GUT. Nougat, or Nougat, however you want to call him. I call it Nougat because I'm pretty sure that's, his official pronunciation. So Nougat and he was a total jerk off, but he was a magnificent artist, and he was also bizarrely generous at times, even to people he considered to be enemies. But he was a fantastic artist, and he was super creative. So I think he was also an adult. So Nougat makes this website for New World, and it looks official. It looks bigger than it actually is. And they start asking kids to like fill out these applications to showcase their work so that they can find the best of other parents' talent and start taking their work from them unpaid, uncontracted, without a parent's signature, without a legal transference of intellectual property rights through a contract signed by both the parent and the licensee. None of that was a part of the process. They just started asking other people's kids to send in the best of their best, and they were going to start like farming people's children like a slaughterhouse. They were going to start farming people's children So they start asking the best talent of people's kids to start sending in their work for free, and they were going to find what they considered to be the most talented kids in the community. Because again, they were mostly kids and stuff. There were some young adults or just whatever, but they were targeting kids to send in their work, and then they were going to take their work, and they said, well, what you get out of this is the pride of knowing that you did something good for God and for the world, and knowing that you were part of a team, which, by the way, is not compensation. And that's also not a legal transference of intellectual property. This was all illegal. So Vangel and them are posting on graalonline.com, asking other people's kids to send in their work, and they were going to start using those kids for free child labor, which is also illegal, for free child labor, where they were going to take their work and compile it into a game that the kids make, and then they were going to take credit for it and start selling it under their name, and Vangel and Unixmad and them were going to lord themselves over it like fucking Dungeons and Dragons masters. Like the dungeon master of Dungeons and Dragons. Like fucking total dorks, just lording themselves over an entire video game, an empire built by children, other people's children. They were going to lord themselves over it, take credit for it, sell it, host it, and operate it as their own property, as their own intellectual property, illegally. So this is what they were trying to do. So Vangel and them are doing this. They're like, oh yeah, just send in your stuff. And they're like making posts after posts. Hey, come on kids. Yeah, we got the good work coming in. Send us more applications. We're making progress. So they have other people's kids making this fucking so-called game for people, just like, because it wasn't working in Jesus Freaks. So Vangel couldn't pull it off in Jesus Freaks because the religious kids were too smart for it, and they're not going to sit there and make video games for you for free, you freak. So like they start like preying on the non-religious kids who are too, innocent and don't have, I guess, a higher recognition of their own self-worth. Although religious kids, can be easily manipulated too with their beliefs against them. So we all had our different vulnerabilities. So this particular project, they're using like narcissism to appeal to the non-religious community within the game development sphere. And they're getting these kids to like make this stuff for them. So it's kind of popping off. They're throwing up all this like news posts and talking about how big it is, this, and that. And none of this stuff is being made by like adults, for the most part, like it's kids. These are children who are making this. They're not being paid. Their parents aren't giving consent to it. There's no legal transference of intellectual property. It's Unixmad's not doing it. Stefan's not doing it. Vangel's not doing it. It's not their idea. It's not their design. Children are making this game. And so that starts happening. And just like these other fucking fake games that that Vangel tried to create in Jesus Freaks, it never happened. It never happened. And the reason it never happened is because Unixmad and Stefan had their own agenda, and Vangel had his own agenda. So Vangel wanted to have control over a video game without making it, and Stefan and Unixmad wanted to have control over a video game without making it. But Stefan and Unixmad also had control over the game engine and Unixmad's primary server. And I say Unixmad's primary server because there were other servers in the community. There was a G server application, and Stefan was collaborating with Unixmad to try to like pull off this fake, game community by, faking it till he made it basically. So that's not happening, and they're now recruiting Vangel to try to rally other kids to make a game for them so that they can sell it. Unixmad and Stefan simply just want a video game that they can sell, because they couldn't sell one at this point. For one, nobody would pay for it. They tried. Two, it was a Zelda 3 clone. It was a complete knockoff. And three, the game engine was kind of junk and low quality. So what happened was I was making my own games before New World. I was working on, my own games and my own community. And Vangel was really jealous and envious of this. This is why he started New World. Vangel went off and started New World because I wasn't going to make his games for him. And I decided to take Destiny and just keep it for myself. I was bored of the Jesus Freaks not making anything. Vangel was all talk and no game. He wasn't doing anything. So I said, hey, I was like, I'm going to, just... Oh, and the other thing too is Vangel was angry that he couldn't control my video games. Like, he wanted to make them his own. And I was like, you can't take over my project, buddy. Like, that's not going to be a thing. So, you know, I took Destiny and I decided to just make it my own. And I was hosting it on my mom's server, my own computer, which is why I was also getting hacked all the time. This is one of the reasons I was being hacked, because I was making my own games. And Vangel was not a part of that, and there was nobody there protecting what I was doing. I was just me, with my mom's computer, just making stuff. So, like, I'm getting hacked. I have my own video game. What happens at this point is Destiny was already made. I had finished this game. I had this kind of falling out with the Jesus Freaks bullshit because none of it made any sense to me. And even though I was still a part of the group, I wasn't, like, my heart wasn't in it. And so I took Destiny and I decided to just keep it for myself. Because I made, like, 90% of it. It was mine. It was my fucking project. And I was going to continue doing that. And so I had all these other ideas. I was talking to Stefan to make all this other stuff for the software that I was going to use to enhance my game, which is where Graal Bomby Moon came in, the first game, right? The first pay-to-play game, which was actually an extension of Destiny. And there was other stuff that didn't get released, but it was on the map. You could see it in the archives. And so Vangel sees the writing on the wall because, like, Destiny's complete, and Stefan is getting all these, like, stealing all these ideas from me. And so what happens is Stefan and Unixmad are getting bored of New World not happening fast enough because they never cared about New World. This was all Vangel. This is the same thing he was trying to do in Jesus Freaks. He was trying to make fake video games in Jesus Freaks and take credit for it. And nobody would play by those rules. I refused to play by those rules. I made Destiny almost entirely by myself. Like 90% of Destiny is, was made by me. So I was not going to give Vangel control over that. Even though he was wanting to make video games in Jesus Freaks and tried telling people that, like, I was on his team and that we were this, and that. That's not that it was never the case, because those games never went anywhere. The JFTP never happened. So, I had Vangel trying to, I had asked Vangel to maybe, like, help me with my video games because his projects weren't going anywhere. And he was getting really angry about that. Like, he was getting very envious and competitive with me. So he decided to start the New World project, right? And around the same time, my games are being completed. I have websites. I have more followers than him. I had, like, the top website in the Graal Top 50, which was, the Graal Top 50 was, like, the biggest website around for many years, where you could have your Graal websites or games or whatever you wanted it to be in this network of links where people could find your websites. And mine was always, like, at the top. I was in, like, the top 3 of the Graal Top 50 at all times. And that's because I had a huge network and I worked really hard and I had my own projects. So I was in the top 3 all the time. And Vangel was getting really, really, really upset about that. It was, like, bruising his ego. When Destiny gets released, Unixmad and Stefan no longer have a use for Vangel and his nonsense projects. New World is just another. It's like people are like, oh my god, what happened to New World? New World was just another one of Vangel's fake ass failed projects. He was doing this several times already. He had done it in Jesus Freaks multiple times. There were, like, several games he was trying to get kids to make for him in Jesus Freaks, and it didn't work out. When Jesus wasn't working for him, he manipulated Stefan and Unixmad. And his fake connections. He was using, like, these connections through Jesus by, using this for clout to get them to give him permission to do a new project with them. And so when they said, yeah, we'll let you create this thing called New World, they didn't even have a fucking name for it. They didn't even have a name for the game. They called it New World. New World. They were calling it New World. So that should be the first clue to you as to what happened to this game. It was never a game in the first place. It was called New World because they had no name for it. They're like, oh, it's a new world. So, we'll figure it out along the way. We'll just have other kids make it, and then we'll decide what we'll call it. They never had a vision for it. There was no New World. It was just some bullshit project. It was another one of Vangel's bullshit projects. He was trying to do this stuff and Jesus Freaks, and it failed. And he absolutely hated me because I was doing my own things. And he just thought, like, how dare a 12-year-old show me up? And I did. I had my own I had Destiny with my own game, and rightfully, Graal Bombing Moon is Destiny. Also, that was also called Destiny. But what happened is Stefan and Unixmad stole all this stuff and started renaming it. So technically, Graal Bombing Moon is Destiny. Also, it was an extension of Destiny. It was supposed to be the same game. They just stole all of it and started chopping it up and pretending it was multiple games with it, different titles, and it wasn't different titles. Glotica, Destiny, and Graal Bombing Moon, this was all part of Destiny. Glotica was just an underwater world in Destiny, and Graal Bombing Moon was an extension of Destiny. It's just that Unixmad and Stefan started stealing the stuff and, like, refusing to speak the truth about what was happening. So all that stuff was Destiny. I had my own games called Destiny. I had a new site called Antago Press, where, like, I released articles and I released updates and graphics and scripts. I had my own development site with Gandarian called Graal Soft, where we were creating items and scripts and collaborating to put people together into network. I had my own guilds. I had different other networks and different guilds I was creating. I had my own message boards. I had all kinds of stuff going on with me. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I had tons and tons of networks I was creating. Vangel didn't have any of this. Vangel just had Jesus Freaks, and it was failing. He wanted to have kids and Jesus Freaks make video games for him, and they weren't going anywhere. Because he wasn't going to do anything. He was lazy. He wanted other people to do it. So he's like, I'm going to make a new game, and it's called, I don't know, it's a New World. So, like, they called it New World, and it was... There's no name. There was no name to it. It was just a generic word called New World. And this was just because Vangel couldn't make the stuff happen in Jesus Freaks, where he was trying to milk and use children like cattle for milk. Like, it wasn't going to happen. So he started New World. He fucking started New World. And it has no name to it. It's just called New World. Nougat makes the website for it. Vangel doesn't even make the website for it. Nougat makes promotional art for it. Nobody else makes promotional art for it. This is Nougat making it. Nougat was just an artist they were taking advantage of in the community. And I know this because Nougat and I were frenemies. We were actually technically frenemies. Because like I said, I was a game developer in the community. I was one of the game studios in the community. I was Antago Press and Graal Soft. I was a number of things. So, like, I had connections to all these people, all of them. I already had connections to all these people. I knew who these people were. And I've been there, done that 1,000 times. Nougat and I had already worked on a website previously before, around the same time, you know. Nougat's a talented artist. They took advantage of him. Nougat made the fucking website. Nougat made it. He was making the graphics and the art for it. He was very good at airbrushing. I think he was using Photoshop or Paint Shop Pro to airbrush. He was really good at airbrushing and making things look professional. So New World appeared bigger than it was. And then they got some pixel artists who were some kids and stuff to make a bunch of pixel art for the new tile set. All of those tiles, they weren't paid for. Vangel didn't pay for that stuff. This was another project. He just had the only thing is that Vangel had a bigger network to start luring people in, and they were like seducing them with the pride of trying to give them power over the community, because everybody wanted, there was a lot of people who wanted control over Unixmad server, because Unixmad had the primary Zelda 3 server. So you have people making pixel art now. You had a number of people making levels. I think Nightlord was making some levels in there. And then they started getting Kyle0654, who was a friend of mine as well. Kyle0654 and I were really good friends, and he was he was like the best programmer, and he was a child that these people were taking advantage of. And so Kyle0654 is making like scripts for New World and trying to like help Vangel, these other people, like make this fake game happen, and it never happened. The reason it never happened is because I was already making... Vangel started New World because I had took Destiny, my own game, and just said, fuck you, I'm making my own stuff. I'm not going to let you be a part of my project unless you're, like, under me, like you're supposed to be. You can't sit here and say that I'm an adult, I can now lord myself over you. I wasn't going to let Vangel take control of my fucking art, my projects, because I made my stuff. So what happened was Vangel got upset that I was not going to make his stupid Jesus Freaks games for him, and that I went off and I took Destiny and kept it for myself because he didn't pay for it and he didn't make it. So I kept Destiny because it was my game. And Vangel was getting really jealous, so he ran off and started New World. And he had like made a rule where like I was not allowed to be on the New World team because of this, and this reason. He kept telling people I was arrogant. He kept making stuff up, which is fine because I had my own game. I didn't need to be on New World. At one point, I wanted to be potentially in the New World project because I was a kid, and I thought it would be good for networking for my own stuff. But they wouldn't let me on the team, which is fine. I don't care. So, and they thought that he really thought that he had one over me and he was going to like show me up. And it never happened. It just never happened because Destiny, I had already made Destiny. I had spent over a year working on it, about-ish. I had tons of stuff I had been making several years before I joined the Graal community. The Zelda online community. I had also a bunch of stuff I was making within the whole year that I was there, developing all my games. So I had my own websites, my own networks, and I decided that, Destiny was going to be released, and I did. I launched Destiny, and it was a full functioning game. It was clearly made by a child. Like, it had a lot of flaws, don't get me wrong, but it was functional. And I spent, this was before you could auto-generate entire worlds. I had to, I built that entire like landscape by hand. I laid all the tiles. I designed where all the cliffs were going to be. I drew it out on paper. The things that I need to draw on paper, like I would draw designs for the levels on paper, and then I would go and I would design them on the level editor. This was before you could auto generate worlds. I built that all by hand. New World, again, this was before the auto world generator. So like New World, in order for that to happen, they needed a lot of people working on it. I had more time than other people because I was a child. I wasn't working a job. I could be at home like all summer long. I would be like or on Christmas break, on spring break, on weekends, through the night, things like that. Like I had a lot of time, a lot more time than other people. I didn't have to pay bills. I was a child. I was living in my mom's house. So I was making stuff. I built entire video games by hand. Now, what you see today, things are kind of auto-generated in Graal, and there's so much stuff there that like, it's a lot easier to facilitate, make things happen now. But at the time, it was a lot of work, a lot of work. And so, and I would sit in study hall in school or like in class in school, and I would just like come up with ideas and I would write it down on paper and I would design characters and think of names and come up with different ideas for graphics and stuff for my websites and marketing. So like I came up with all kinds of stuff. I had more time than other people to do this stuff. And so a year passes and Destiny's done. New World is still in progress. It's just another one of Vangel's projects that he was trying to use other people's kids to make. Like he was trying to do in Jesus Freaks and failed to do. And so Stefan and Unixmad are getting bored of New World because they never cared about New World to begin with. This was just another one of Vangel's, things where he was going to take advantage of the community. He was just going to take advantage of the community and then slap his name on it and then get a bunch of clout. He was a clout chaser. Vangel's a clout chaser. He had some programming knowledge, but he was mostly a clout chaser. So that wasn't working fast enough for him because, again, it was other people's kids making things. And most of the kids in the community were like one-trick ponies. I was a jack of all trades. So like I was making my own stuff happen, and I'm a bigger visionary. I'm a bigger visionary, and I'm a better poet. So like I had Destiny already done. Stefan and Unixmad never cared about New World because New World to them was always just about trying to use Vangel to make a game using other people's kids so that they could sell it for themselves. None of them had a dream for New World. They never designed New World. New World was not Vangel's vision. New World was not Unixmad or Stefan's vision. There was no idea for New World. New World never even had a fucking name. That's why they called it New World. It was just another scam. If you look at all of these freaking things that they were doing, it all sounds like a scam. New World. Before Graal Bomby Moon was named Graal Bomby Moon, they were like, it was supposed to be Destiny. And Stefan and Unixmad were like, no, we're not going to call this Destiny. They're telling me that I can't call, Graal New Main, as they were calling it, Destiny. It was supposed to be a part of Destiny. All of it was supposed to be one piece. They chopped it up and split it into 2 games and started claiming that they were a game publishing company. That's not what it was. So there was a time before they named G2K1, or aka Graal New Main, Graal Bomby Moon. And technically, Graal Bomby Moon is Destiny. It's not Graal Bomby Moon. It's not G2K1, and it's not Graal New Main. Even though those were all nicknames for it, it's Destiny 100,000 fucking %. It was always a part of my other Destiny game. They simply stole it all, refused to call it Destiny, refused to tell the community the truth, and threatened me with lawyers if I spoke up. So, Graal New Main, as they were calling it, is just the same thing, right? They're like, New Main. He was calling, Stefan was calling it New Main for a long time, or G2K1, Graal 2001. Because they didn't, why do you think they were calling it that? Why do you think it was called Graal 2001 and Graal New Main for like a year before they called it Graal Bomby Moon? Why do you think it was called New Main? For the same reason that New World was called New World. For the same reason. Because they didn't make this stuff. They had no vision for it. It wasn't their project. It wasn't their ideas. It wasn't their labor. They didn't pay for it. They were just using kids and like making up generic names for it because they aren't game developers and game owners. Stefan and Unixmad are thieves, and so is Vangel. So like, New World is just a generic name. Oh, New World. It's just a new world, I guess. Oh, New Main. It's just, the New Main server. So for the longest time, they were calling Destiny. Graal Bomby Moon it's supposed to be attached to Destiny, to the Destiny that you see in Graal Classic. It was all one piece. And Stefan and Unixmad refused to allow that to happen because they were threatening me with lawyers, and Stefan and Unixmad were stealing the content and refusing to showcase it as one piece like it was supposed to be. So Destiny and Graal Bomby Moon, as they renamed it, which was called Graal New Main for a whole fucking year, were one game. Graal Bomby Moon is not Graal Bomby Moon, it's Destiny. And Bombies are a part of Destiny. This is all one game that I was making. It was my game studio, my game. You know what I mean? And they fucked me over. I could have trademarked the name Destiny before they stole all that from me. They fucked my life up. They stole all of it from me. So like, Graal Bomby Moon, or they were calling it Graal New Main for the longest time. It's the same prototype. New World, New Main, Graal 2001, Graal Classic. Like, they're just generic names. Graal New World was called Graal New World because there was no game. There was no vision for it. There was no idea for it. It was Vangel, Stefan, and Unixmad trying to rip off children and convincing them to make a game for them. So after they stole my Destiny game, Stefan and Unixmad no longer had a need for New World. Vangel was irrelevant. Galen had become irrelevant. They took Destiny. They split it up into 2 pieces. They called it Destiny, a continent on Graal Classic, which it was not. It was originally maybe going to be a continent in the Jesus Freaks world, which never happened. That never happened. There was a JFTP program with a game hosted on a separate G server in the Jesus Freaks Guild. It never happened. So I took Destiny and made it my own game. You can see this in the old news posts where I'm talking about how there's full hearts, how it's my own empires, my own kingdom, it's this, and that, and it's being unfortunately, transported over to the Graal, what you now know today as the Graal Classic server, and I'm leaving the game because, well, obviously, as was implied there, they were taking it from me, they were stealing it from me. So Graal 2001, or Graal Bomby Moon, as they renamed it, um, is still Destiny. That was all one game. They took Destiny, split it up into two pieces, sold it as Graal Classic and Graal 2001, opened up business. Stefan moved to Paris so that they could call themselves a gaming publishing company. And New World no longer had a fucking purpose. Vangel no longer had a purpose. So what happened is it all died out. After, I had come up with the idea for the NPC server and a number of things that me and Kyle 0654 were revising in terms of what needed changed in the game engine for Stefan to implement were being implemented. So the game engine was evolving, my games were being published, and Graal New World, or whatever, this fake project that Vangel put out, had no purpose. It was done for. It was done for. It no longer had a fucking purpose. So that faded away like the wind, of course. And it was another one of Vangel scams that just failed. It just completely failed. So all the kids who were involved, they don't recognize, one, that they were being exploited, and two, that it failed because it was always a racketeer to rob children. And they no longer needed to rob kids for New World, because the whole point, the only interest that Unixmad and Stefan, aka Bomber, Unixmad and Bomber, or Stefan Portland, Stefan Noor, as they're legally named, the only interest that Unixmad and Bomber had in New World and Vangel was trying to create a fake title with other people's kids that they could sell. Unixmad and Bomber wanted to make money, and they wanted to steal a game. They didn't need New World to exist anymore. Do you understand that? Does that make sense to you now? They didn't need this so-called project called New World anymore. It no longer had a fucking relevance. That's why it died. Because they no longer needed Vangel. They no longer needed New World. They no longer needed it. They were selling Destiny and claiming it was Graal. They stole Destiny from me, chopped it up into two fucking pieces, claimed it was two separate games, claimed it was their own, called it Graal Classic, called it Graal Bomby Moon. Well, at the time they were calling it Graal New Main or Graal 2001 for like a year. So they called it Graal Classic and Graal Bomby Moon, and pretended that they were a game publishing company, and they started selling it and making money. They didn't need Graal New World anymore. They wanted to make money. They wanted to sell a game. And they didn't have, Stefan and Unixmad were, one, not game makers. They're not creative. They didn't go to video game design school. They're not designers. And they didn't have the money to pay for a game. They just needed to steal a game. So they were using Vangel to try to rally children, because Vangel was a child predator from the Jesus Freaks Church. They were using him to try to rally children like he was doing in JF. That failed. He failed at it the first time. And he failed at it the second time, although he was kind of succeeding for a minute. They were using Vangel to lure in children to try to build a new game that they could sell, because they wanted to make money. And they couldn't. At the time, they couldn't sell anything. Nobody would pay for anything. They didn't have anything to sell. So after they took Destiny from me as a child by tricking me, by claiming they were going to quote unquote give me free hosting, this was long, long before what you see today. This was around when G servers existed. They started lying and calling these things player worlds. They were not player worlds. They were my own games made by my own studio. This was long before this was before player worlds, before terms and conditions. My parents never signed any rights away. This was all my property. They stole it from me. They took Destiny, chopped it into two fucking pieces, started selling it. They took all of my other fucking ideas for the software, implemented it. They built the NPC server. They took my ideas for the NPC server. They took other ideas for my marketing. They took my team from me. And then they started taking the money that my games were generating and using it to buy houses, using it to buy fucking cars, to buy servers. Unixmad bought servers. Those servers that Unixmad has are my servers. He paid for those with my money. Do you get that? He paid for all that fucking stuff. Everything that Unixmad owns today was paid for and expounded by my money, was invested with my money. His server that he had at the time, he was running out of space. He was running out of money. He was running out of funding. They paid for the trademarks and all that stuff that they needed. They paid for the business fees. They paid for the taxes that they paid to the government. They paid for their employees with my money. They paid for the new servers with my money. They paid for the company fucking business hall with my money. The studio, the actual physical studio that they rented, that was my money that they used. That was my game studio. It was paid for by my money. My money. They had no money. They sold Destiny, called it Graal 2001, paid for it with my fucking money. All those employees, L'Oreal, Bird, anybody else at the time who was a paid employee, those were my fucking employees that they paid for with my money. My money, my games, my intellectual property. So Graal Kingdoms comes about. Graal Kingdoms is a sequel to Graal 2001. This is why there's bombies all over, little bomby boppets, as I named them, bomby boppets. They took my Graal, my Destiny concept, called it Graal 2001, then renamed that to Graal Bomby Moon, and then used all my money to build a game company, to buy new servers with my money, and then they took my concept and created a sequel called Graal Kingdoms, which was an evolution of the Bomby world, where like the evil Bombies were taking over. The evil Bombies from Graal, from my Destiny game, had then taken over and become the so-called game called Graal Kingdoms, and they paid for the employees and the graphics and all that stuff with my money. The stuff that they used to build Graal Kingdoms, again, that they paid for that with my money, and it was my intellectual property. It was a sequel to Graal 2001, which was actually Destiny, an extension of Destiny. So New World faded away with the wind. Graal Kingdoms was a sequel to my game with my intellectual property. So Graal Kingdoms is also my fucking game because it was a Bomby sequel. It was a Graal 2001 sequel. It was a Destiny sequel. So anyways, New World just went away. They no longer needed it because they stole my games and my games started making money.